There are a couple of things that I want to discuss about leadership and mentoring. Now, I have plenty of resources on leadership and mentoring if you would like to use any of them at some point. However, I think I'm going to keep it pretty brief for this particular unit. The bullet points on the left-hand side really talk about leadership, but before we discuss those, I want to distinguish between leadership and management. Now, management is something that you need to be able to do. Those skills are valuable to keep a program, a team functioning on a day-to-day basis. That's your scheduling, that's your just overall task management type of things, your people management type of things. Leadership is a little bit different from that. It feeds off of management, but leadership really focuses around goals and future vision. Future goals and vision. If you want to consider that maybe management is equating to maintaining, leadership is propelling teams and individuals forward. So being able to have a vision, being able to have shared goals with the team, and being able to propel that team forward is an essential quality of leadership. In order to gain leadership and to keep leadership, that trust building is very important to that. You might be able to maintain things fairly well, but you'll never be able to move people and teams forward without building trust. Trust is one of those elements that's kind of cyclical. It will allow you to get to certain pieces of leadership, but it'll also help you maintain them as well. Delegation is another important aspect. Delegation is really a leadership piece. Now, as a manager, you can delegate things, but a leader really takes time to think about that delegation. Delegation is not just the element of picking a task and handing it off to someone and checking with them to make sure it got done. Delegation is kind of a careful process in which, as a leader, you're looking at your team, you're looking at their strengths and weaknesses, you're looking how to build on those, and you're considering what task you have to give and who it's best meant for. Now, you can't just always rely on volunteers to do things, because sometimes volunteers will be very enthusiastic and want to do it, but might not have the same skills and qualities of the person that you really need to do the job. So the other thing that you have to be willing to do is, in being a leader, is to allow yourself to delegate. There are leaders that, or people that attempt to be leaders, that really have a hard time letting go of a task. You know, they own it too much. They really feel like no one could do it as well as they could. You have to not only let go of that, but you also have to think there might be multiple ways of doing this, and my way might not be the only right way. So a leader will look at all aspects and carefully in being able to delegate something. Another important piece to leadership that I want to point out is that shared success. A leadership shares the success of what they're doing with their team. They don't necessarily take credit, they share credit. And I think that's really an important piece to fold back into that trust building. If you or your department have success within the building, maybe your CSAP scores have risen for the kids that you are servicing, make sure that you share that success with them and you share that credit with them. Okay, there's lots of other things to talk about where leadership is concerned, but I wanted you to be mindful of those particular pieces. Mentoring is a little bit more dynamic than that. Mentoring really talks about various ways of supporting someone. Now, mentoring is usually not in collaboration with an evaluator, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but there are 3 different levels of mentoring. Now, not necessarily is there just one person doing this, but for the role that you are looking at in working with paraprofessionals, I would say it's safe to say that you could be consulting, and I don't mean in the sense that we do it for service delivery for students, but you could be consulting with someone, you could be collaborating, or you could be coaching. I've attached a handout, and if you're going through this presentation really early, it may not be there because it's got to be scanned and uploaded first. But there's a handout that really gives you some ideas of what types of activities you would see in each one of those types of progressive mentoring. Consulting is really something that you do when someone needs more guidance in being told what to do. And then coaching is just the opposite of that, is where they really know what to do. You just need to guide them a little bit. And so collaboration is kind of in the middle, and you'll be able to see that on that handout. Questioning is a very important tactic in mentoring someone. Being able to ask the right questions, especially open-ended questions, to allow them to think. Also being able to reflect back on what they're saying. A lot of times people will have the right answers, but they're looking for you to just tell them so that it can be validated in their own minds. When really allowing them to learn how to accept their own thinking and to problem solve it through their own process is probably a more independent skill that we can assist them with. Always having someone else to fall back on for the answers is not really what we want to do to help people to grow. I do this with alternative teachers all the time. At the beginning, I will just almost tell them what to do because they have no point of reference. As they get more and more experience, that comes into the questioning and the reflective practices, in that if I ask the right questions and guide them the right way, they will come to their own answers. And that's part of being a mentor with paraprofessionals or other professionals that you might be mentoring in the building. And then there's this concept of third point. It's another little mentoring technique in which you have yourself as kind of a mediator, and you're working with a mentee. A third point is, I guess, a relevant piece that you throw out there to be considered, whether it is a mental perspective, maybe something to reflect on, maybe you throw out there an experience that you've had or that someone had, or an anecdotal piece of information, or maybe you pull out a piece of curriculum and you look through it and you go through it, and the questioning kind of revolves around that third piece of information, whether it's the story or the scenario or the piece of curriculum or the piece of student work. Third point is that piece where your conversation can kind of revolve around, and you can guide the questioning and that person's thought process around that piece. I also have listings of what internal, which is those more internal thought pieces of information, versus external, which is that concrete, curriculum or student work or something tactile to work with. I have lists of what those things could potentially be if you're interested. But that's another tactic. Now, my big question in working as a special educator with a paraprofessional is it possible that the two can coexist, being a mentor and evaluator? I have big cautions about this. Mentors are someone that can be used as a resource, can be relied on, can be asked questions when someone is uncomfortable about asking particular things, thinking they will be judged or evaluated on not knowing. So my suggestion to you is this: if your district puts you in the position of being an evaluator, make sure that you have some sort of secondary mentor, whether it's another paraprofessional that's very veteran or another special ed person down the hall someone that would know the answers to questions that that person has a backup if they feel like they're uncomfortable asking you for some reason because you're their evaluator. I think the two can fairly well coexist, but you always want another resource person for that mentor. You don't want them not asking questions because they feel you might judge them for not knowing the answer. So give them a safety net in doing that. If you have any other questions or want some more information or ideas about mentoring, please see me. I'm happy to share.